Nicholas Lacassi, digital tutorial. He'll show you how to do it, so just watch the tutorial.
Hello. Today we're going to be learning the basics of 3D modeling in Rhino, starting with these three basic objects of a triangle, cylinder, cube, and pyramid, using various 3D modeling tools to produce a more abstract representation like this. At this point, you should have gone through the Introduction in Computer Setup PDF to download the various programs we're going to be using through this week. This tutorial will be primarily focused on the virtual machine, where you will have access to Rhino. Once you've gone through the process and download the virtual machine, you need to log in with your username and password. And once you're in, I don't think you're going to see as many of these icons as I have here, but you're going to click on the SOA AutoCAD to open up this interface. In here, you should sign into Canvas and download this Rhino kit of parts from assignment 1. In that folder, after you extract it, you will find the Rhino file to open, aliases, options, and the Sketchfab tutorial. Open up the assignment 1 kit of parts 3D model. It might take a second to open up the first time, but it should get quicker. You should be greeted with this. So Rhino has a lot of different ways that you can use it, but in this view we have the top view, front view, isometric view, and a perspective of these 4 objects that we're going to be manipulating. So first off, we're going to install the options and aliases so that we can customize Rhino and make it fit our use for this week. You can start typing anywhere and then it'll fill out in the command bar. We're going to use this more later. So if I type options and click aliases right here, I can import the file that was in the zip folder by clicking import and going to where it was saved, which is here. And then if I click this Rhino aliases and open it here, and we want to say yes all. This will make it easier to use some of the programs and create a uniform experience for the TAs and myself working on our computer and you working on your computer. Once you have the aliases set, you can click OK. And you can type in the command options import. And then you can click these dots to search your computer. And then you can select Rhino options and click open. And I would select all these different options that you're going to be importing. Press OK. It's going to take a second because you're changing a lot of different things. So if you give it a moment to load, it's going to update. It might take a second to complete, but once it's all set, you should be able to right click where it says view 1 here. And click pen white background. That should change this display options to a view that we can later export out of Rhino as a JPEG. Okay, so let's start with a brief overview of the Rhino interface. There's some things here that you don't need that you can just get rid of. So you're not going to need this or this. So we can just drag them out and X those out. Then up here we have our command bar where you're typing in all of your commands. There's a full list of commands in the PDF that we're going to be following along here. Up top we have some like standard tools for hiding, unhiding, You can lock objects, you can select different views, everything's kind of all there, and you can either click these buttons or you can type it in the command bar. On the sidebar here is some basic 2D and 3D modeling tools, but for the most part, what I do is if I want to try to do something, I'll just type it out. Like if I want to make a box, I can type in the word box, and then it'll make a box. So you can like drag and select to click, and then in a different view, kind of see it's pushing up. You can see here I'm making a 3D box. So it's really important to think about how to use all 4 views to kind of create your objects in the space. On the right side here, we can make this a bit bigger. We have our properties, which show in each view. See how, like, if you look at this, when I click over here, it changes to the title and parallel. And this is going to be view 1 and perspective. We also have the layers. So right now, everything that we have, make this a little bigger, is on this kit of parts layer. But say if I wanted to have multiple iterations, I can make a new layer and call this, I can right click and click rename. I can say this is iteration 2, and then I can like copy and paste things to it and stuff. So in terms of interface, how to use Rhino and move around, it's really based on clicks of your keyboard. So if you're in a parallel view, you can use the right click on your mouse to pan around, and the scroll wheel to zoom in and out. You can also hold the mouse wheel button to do a zoom selected. So if I click on an object with the left click, and then I click this in, it'll zoom in on that object. Another thing is that if you're in a 3D view, and if you're trying to right click to pan around, in a 3D view, it'll rotate around objects. So something to consider if you're working in a 3D view or 2D view, things are going to be slightly different. On the bottom here, we have our object snaps, which is used from this button here. When turning this on and off, see how this is no longer bold, these kind of gray out. That means that if you select on something, it's not going to snap to a portion of it. So we're not really going to worry about that too much. Another thing that we're going to be using a lot is the Gumball. So we can click on that to select it. And so now when we click on an object, this pattern comes around it. So we can use this to do a lot of different things. So I'm going to use this mouse click button to zoom in on this view right here. As you can see, there's a lot of different things, and it might be a little bit confusing initially, but it's rather straightforward. We can use these arrows here to move the object along an axis. So if I use the blue arrow, it'll go up and down. The red will go left and right, and the green will go forward and back. So it's based on like X, Y, and Z axes. There's also this square up here, which you can move in any direction along that axis. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to work primarily in this right view here. So we can expand the view and make it easier for everyone to see by double clicking on right. And then that expands the view so we can work completely there. And if you wanted to see all 4 views again, you can double click this again to return to that view. So in this view, let's look at that a little bit more. So as you can see, we can push it down in this axis, or it's over, so it's still gonna be in the same place along this like red or the Y axis, but this is just affecting, like, see how when I hover on that, those turn black. We can move them both together. The other thing that we can do here is rotate. So that would be using these 3 arcs here. So if I take the red one, it'll be rotating around the red axes. And so if I just just use my mouse, it's going to just move to 90-degree angles. It might be better to show it with the pyramid. So if I just do this, it's going to rotate along 90 degrees. That's really helpful because the reason why it's doing that is because ortho is selected, but we can easily override that by holding down shift, the shift key on our keyboards. And then now, as you see, when I do it, it'll rotate like to whatever number we want. And then also on the bottom left-hand corner, I'll move my mouse over to here. You can see this number changing. That's going to be how much we're going to be rotating, and you can do it by precise numbers, or you can just follow that and be in precision. For this exercise, nothing needs to be extremely precise, because we're going to be producing these abstract geometries. So it's okay if things aren't perfectly level or straight. It's more about experimenting in the sandbox and kind of what you can create. Another big command, I mean, I'm sure you know, like Control-Z and Control-Y from other programs. The same thing applies here. So I can do, if you look up in this corner here, I can do Control-Z and it'll do undo. And I can do Control-Y to redo. So additionally, with the Gumball, we can use this to stretch and manipulate geometry. So we would use these squares here to stretch. So if I just click this one and I push it in or out, it's going to expand and contract along that axis. But if you wanted to scale it uniformly across all axes, if you hold shift, it'll scale all three. You can kind of see when we're doing these movements, the Gumball will show which ones we're interacting with. Right now, since I'm holding shift, all three axes are activated and we're using them all to scale uniformly. Another important thing to consider is copying and pasting objects. In the tutorial, you're going to need to have at least a total of 10 objects. So there's a couple ways to do that. We can continue to use the Gumball for that operation by, when you have an object selected and you're moving it, you can use the Alt key on your keyboard to click it, and then there's this box next to it with the plus sign pops up, and that shows that you're creating a copy. So if I click Alt again, it'll go away. So clicking Alt and let go, it'll create a copy. And the same thing works for rotation. So say if I move this over and I click Alt, it makes a copy. And then if I rotate this and click Alt, it'll make a duplicate of it. So we have two intersecting pyramids. Another way to move objects around and create copies is to use the command bar. So instead of using the Gumball to move something around or kind of move it around like this, you can move things precisely by typing in the word move. And so up here, it gives you an interface where it says point to move from. And so since this was selected initially, this is a thing that it's going to move. Or what you can do is you can have nothing selected and then it'll ask you a thing to move. So first off, I'll just start by moving this. So it's gonna ask you for a point to move from, and you can click any point on here, and that'll be your base point. And then it's going to change, it says point to move to. And so in this, you can type in a number. You could say I want this to move 4 inches, and then that'll move it that distance in any direction. And I can do that like this, or you can say move and point to move from, say selecting the same point, and then you can click a point to move it to. So I just moved it from there to touching the edge of this pyramid. Another thing you can do is copy. Instead of using the Gumball and use the Alt key, you can type in the word copy. So if I don't have to click here, I can just type wherever and it'll pop up there. And then in the same way that we use move to select objects, I can click this, and then then it says press enter to done, because I could click multiple objects and copy them all. But for now, we're just going to click one. So then I'm going to click enter, and then the point to copy from, I'm going to click this point, and point to copy to, I'm going to copy it to there. So now we've copied from this point, so now this is creating some sort of staircase or geometry that we can kind of work with here. You can, if you click and drag, it creates this box here, and as you can see, if I go to the right, it's a solid box, and if I go to the left, it's a dashed box. So if I drag select and I click, if I go through these, things that go running through the object will be selected. So see that if I just click it just a little bit, it'll select it. So I can drag select this way, and everything that would be touching the box or crossing the box would be selected. But if I drag the other way, only things that are contained in the box will be selected. So right now, this triangle is contained and the cylinder is not, so only the triangle will be selected. The same thing here, these three will be contained, and so those will be selected and the pyramid will not. This gets really helpful if you wanted to make multiple copies of something. You can select them all and copy them with the Gumball and really easily. So continuing talking about important Rhino commands that you should know, I would say the most important command out of all of them is save. You should make sure that you're saving as and you're making multiple copies, just because there's a possibility of you losing your work, and that would set you back a lot, especially if we only have 5 days together. So if I click File, Save As, it'll pop up a command bar, and in here I can just say, I'll put my initials after it, and I'll put today's date. Today's the 18th, 20/07/18. So now this creates a separate file that's unique from the original one, and then we can save multiple copies on top of that. Another thing that we could do is we can hold Control S, and that is a shortcut for saving, or we can type in the word save into the command bar and click enter. So it's really important that you're saving frequently, because there could be a possibility of your computer shutting off or the virtual machine not working, and you would lose a lot of your work, and I would hate for that to happen. So continuing along with the Rhino commands, there's a couple other ones that you might need to use. There's a full command list in the PDF that you were given, but another one that might be helpful is mirror. So if you select your object and you type in the word mirror, it can create like a mirrored copy based on a plane. So it's going to ask you for a start of mirror plane, and I'm going to click this, and end of mirror plane. So as you can see, it's kind of creating this object that's duplicating it. So if I click this way, it's going to make a mirror that's facing down. So this is really helpful. Say if you wanted to rotate your object and like reflect it, you can use this command. Another command that might be helpful is scale. So in the same way that we were using the Gumball to stretch and scale things, you can use a precise command. So I'm going to copy this over to here, and I'm going to type in the word scale, and it's going to ask for a base point similarly to the other commands. I'm going to click this one, and then so you can type in a scale factor and say I want it to be twice the size, and you can just type in the word 2 and it would scale it up. Or you can, if you click a base point, you can create a reference point. So I can say this is my first reference point, and then that'll scale it to whatever size I want to. This is kind of like a redundant thing if you only want to scale with the Gumball, which is really helpful to know how to do these sorts of things. Once you create your geometry, you might want to just edit a part of it. For example, if we were working with something like this, say if I wanted to take this face and move it over, there's a couple ways to do that. The one that I like to use the most is a command called move face. So instead of moving the whole object, we're going to select a face of the object and move just that. So if I type move face into the command prompt, and then it's going to ask me to select faces. So I'm just going to select this one. As you can see, the yellow box kind of tells you what's being currently selected. And I can click enter, and then it's going to ask me for a point to move from. So I'm going to click this point, and I'm going to ask me for a point to move to. So I'm going to click this point. So using these things, we can create a lot of unique objects. Like I can click move. If I click enter again, it'll repeat the same command. So it's going to ask me to select faces again. And then I can go and I can make this really long. Or it can get weird and I can distort it and move it over to here. So now it's like warped in perspective, and it could be really exciting. It could be a lot of really exciting things you can do with that. This was the geometry I ended up creating after working on this for a bit. As you can see, the cubes don't really look like cubes anymore. They're planes and walls and objects. The cylinder is now a column and a frame that attaches. The triangle has become a place to sit on, a place to relax. So now we're going to get into exporting this and finding a view. Throughout this process, you should kind of be considering where you're shooting this from. So it's important to be switching back to this view and kind of considering the perspective where you're going to be taking the view from. So you can rotate around this view and kind of zoom in and out to see where you want to shoot your shot from. So this whole time I was kind of setting up this view here. In this view, there's a couple other ways that you can move the camera around. There's a couple other ways that you can control this view. If you hold down Alt and right click, you can zoom in and out straight on your view. If you hold down Control and Alt and the right click, you can just move your head around and keeping the camera in the same place. And so you can kind of align your shot to whatever view that you want to get. So throughout the process, you should be iterating and creating screenshots of your design in progress so you have work to show for the final. So if you double click this to make this full scale, I would export the view from here instead of the 4-square view, because it'll be a higher quality and resolution. So click this, and then if you double click that and type this command, view capture to file, it'll open up this interface. So right now the lines look really fuzzy because this is just an approximation, but we set up that display option before so that we wouldn't have to worry about line weights and kind of calibrating that way. Like this sets it up for you. So you're going to click on viewport, and you can change this to the 3200 by 2400, so that'll be like the largest size. And then you can click OK. And it's going to ask you to where do you want to save it. So I'm going to do 01, and then we can save it there. So if we go and open that up, once it's exported, you can open it. Right now it's saying it's open with Acrobat. We can just right click on it and open with Chrome to view it. And that looks pretty good. I would definitely do this more than once to have different options. And for the deliverables, you're going to need multiple views. So the way to do that is in this view, you can either type the word top or switch the other view. So in the top view, double click that to make it open. I can right click on this and click pen white background, and that'll create this shaded view. And the same way I can do view capture to file and do that, go through that process. I can say this as top view. And so then it also asks for an isometric view. And so to do that, you would use the command isometric. So if I type the word isometric, it's going to give you like a parallel isometric view. So if I click northeast, it'll give you this view, and then you can click enter to do it again, and it can give you all 4 isometric or axonometric views of your design. So export 2 of these as well. Another thing that you can do in this view here is that you can explore the other display options. So if we right click on this, there's all these other ones like shaded, which is the one that we were working in before. There's a rendered view. which might be a little bit slow on some of your computers, but it creates a really nice like shaded view. So try to use this one for your alternate view. That in the deliverables it says one view in the render display mode. So try to use this for that. Maybe if you wanted to get like the view from the top of here looking down, you're kind of showing a different option. There's a couple other views as well, like the artistic view that has this neat texture, and the Arctic view, which is similar to the rendered, but the lines aren't as sharp. So mess around with those to fill out the deliverables, and then we can go from there. Once you've exported the views that you need, you should export your entire model as an STL. If we go back to the shaded view and we zoom out, you can do a drag select and select everything, and then go up to here and do File, Export Selected, and that'll pull up this menu. So we're gonna do this name as Lakazi STL file. I'm going to put today's date on it, 2020-07-18, and then save as type. I'm going to change this to STL. I'm going to click save, and from this point you should be able to follow the Sketchfab uploading tutorial, that you can take that STL and upload it to Sketchfab as part of the day 2 deliverables. For day 2, you'll be uploading your files into your concept board. So there's a template set up for you here to upload your orthographic views, isometric views, perspective views, and Sketchfab screenshots. And you can look at these examples created by myself and your TAs. I also would like you to link directly to your Sketchfab file. So once you go through the upload process, you should get a model that you can pan around and move and easily share. And you can mess around with the 3D settings to create different effects. So you can change the background, change the color of things to create kind of unique things. And I would like you to take a screenshot of this page and then also scroll down and click share and copy this direct link and paste it into here so that we can look at it together. This will set us up for the next phase, which will be assignment 2, where we'll be using Photoshop to add materiality and textures to your Rhino vignettes.